Friends, welcome back. So today we will just do a little bit of economics. So we have 11 chapters in economics, and this is the blueprint. So the maximum weightage is for the second chapter in micro, and second is the second chapter in macro. So we will just revise the second chapter of microeconomics. I have notes for all the chapters, so if you want any notes, you can comment down below and I can share it with you. So the second chapter, this is the theory of consumer behavior. So these are the MCQs. Utility is subjective. Shape of an indifference curve is normally convex to the origin. Consumption bundle that is available to the consumer depends on price and income. Equation of budget line is P1x1 plus P2x2, which is equal to M. And the demand for these goods increases as income increases. Those are the normal goods. And vertical demand curve is perfectly inelastic. Ordinal utility analysis expresses utility in ranks. So next is the fill-ups. One satisfying capacity for commodity is utility. Two indifference curves never intersect each other. As income increases, the demand curve for normal goods shifts towards right. The demand for a good moves in the opposite direction of its price. Method of adding two individual demand curve is called as horizontal summation. Next is the match the following. Demand curve is downward sloping. Linear demand curve D bracket P is equal to A minus BP. Unitary elasticity of demand is equal to 1. Complementary goods, pen and ink. Indifference map is a family of indifference curves. Next is the one markers. Budget line, graphical representation of all possible combination of two goods which can be purchased with a given income and price. Cardinal utility, it is the method where we measure a utility using numbers. Marginal utility, it is the utility which the consumer gets by consuming additional units of the commodity. Utility is the one satisfying power of a commodity. MRS is marginal rate of substitution. Indifference curve is graphical representation of various combination of two goods which gives the same level of satisfaction. These are the two markers. Budget set and budget line consists of the combinations which lies on and below the line. Consists of the combination which lie on the line. It is also called opportunity set. It is called price line. So these are the two differences. This is for two markers, so any two differences will do. Inferior goods are those where income of the consumer increases, the demand decreases, and when income decreases, the demand decreases. So it's the opposite. When income increases, the demand decreases, and when income decreases, the demand increases. So the examples are finger millet and pearl millet. Monotonic preference is the preference where a consumer prefers to use the commodity which gives him the highest level of satisfaction. Law of demand, you need to write as it is. When other things are remaining constant and price of the commodity increases, the demand decreases, and when price of the commodity decreases, the demand increases. Two different approaches are the cardinal and the ordinal approach for which explain consumer behavior. Price elasticity is the responsiveness in demand of a commodity due to change in price of the commodity when other things are remaining constant. Price elasticity is percentage change in demand for the good by percentage change in price of the good. Next is the 4 markers, and then we move on to the 6 markers. First difference is the difference between total utility and marginal utility. So total utility is the consumer gets which by consuming all the units, and marginal utility is the utility which the consumer gets by consuming additional units. Total utility increases as more and more good is consumed. It decreases as more and more unit is consumed. It is expressed as summation mu, and mu is TUN minus TUN minus 1. After total utility reaches maximum, it does not rise further, it starts falling. And when total utility falls, marginal utility becomes negative. So total utility curves increases at a diminishing rate and marginal utility diminishes from the beginning. So I can show you an example for that. So total utility is increasing and the marginal utility goes on decreasing at a diminishing rate. Okay. So budget set, with the help of a diagram, budget set is the collection of all possible combination of two goods which are available to a consumer at a given price and income. Suppose a consumer has an income of rupees 20. He wants to spread it on two quantities, suppose apple and orange. And you just consider prices of both the commodities like 4 and 2, and you write the table like this, write the combinations the commodities apple and orange. The price remains constant for apple, that is 4, and orange it remains constant, that is 2, and money spent remains the same, that is 20. So from the above table, EFGHIJ are the various combinations which is available to consumer at a given income of rupees 20. So this is the graphical representation of the table, and in this table here C represents underspent, D represents unattainable because it's more than the consumer's income, OX axis represents apple, OY axis represents orange, and yeah, so that is the explanation of this diagram. Next is the indifference map. So group or set of indifference curve for two commodities showing different level of satisfaction is called an indifference map. So in the indifference map, a higher indifference curve shows a higher level of satisfaction and the lower indifference curve shows lower level of satisfaction. Consumer prefers the highest indifference curve as it gives him the highest level of satisfaction. So you need to name the curves, that is IC1, IC2, IC3 and IC4. So here IC4 gives the highest level of satisfaction 3, 2, than 3, 2 and 1. And IC3 gives the highest level of satisfaction than IC1 and IC2 but less than IC4. So that's indifference map. Next one is the deviation of slope of budget line. So whatever the question is, try to at least give a one-line definition of budget set, budget line, indifference map, whatever they are asking. So budget line is a graphical representation of all possible combination of two goods which can be purchased at a given price and income. You take the same example. The consumer has an income of rupees 20 and he wants to spend on two commodities at price 5, and that's apple and orange. So his combinations like 4 units of apple, 4 units of orange, 2 units of apple and 2 units of orange, because it's priced at 5 4s are 20. Okay, so the slope of budget line measures the amount of change in apple required per unit change in orange. So you consider any 2 points here, that is x1, x2 and x1 plus delta x1 plus delta x2 on the budget line. So the formula of budget line is P1 x1 plus P2 x2 is equal to M, and P1 bracket x1 plus delta x1 plus P2 x2 into delta plus delta x2 is equal to M, and when you subtract these two you get P1 delta x1 plus P2 delta x2 is equal to 0. You get this formula after these two equations. Okay, so in the above diagram, OX axis represents apple, OY axis represents orange, and the absolute value of slope of budget line measures the rate at which the consumer is able to substitute apple for orange when he spends his entire income. Okay, next one is the difference between normal goods and inferior goods. Normal goods, the demand increases when when income of the consumer increases, the demand increases, and for inferior goods, when income increases, the demand decreases. It's the opposite. So normal goods are vegetables, fruits, inferior goods are pearl millet, finger millet and all of that. So income effect is positive for normal goods, income effect is negative. There's a direct relationship between income and demand. There's an inverse relation. Most of the commodities we buy are normal goods because fruits, vegetables are used for our is used daily on regular basis. So that's normal goods, and inferior goods are also known as giffen goods. Next is substitute and complementary. Substitute goods, they are used as alternatives. Complementary, they are consumed together to satisfy a particular want. Substitute goods have competitive demand and complementary goods have joint demand. Price of one substitute good have positive relationship with quantity demanded, and price of one complementary good have negative relationship with quantity demanded. If price of one substitute good increases, the demand curve shifts towards right, and if there's an increase in price of complementary good, demand curve shifts towards the left. So we're done with the 4 markers. Now we have 6 markers. So first is the law of diminishing marginal utility. So this, I'll just briefly tell it to you. So this is one of the most important law in economics, and it is introduced by H.H. Gostin and popularized by Alfred Marshall. And according to the law, when other things are remaining constant, when consumer consumes more and more units of the same commodity, utility derived from the additional units, that is the marginal utility, decreases. So these are the assumptions. Consumer should be rational, consumption should be continuous, utility can be measured using cardinal method, taste and preference should be the same. So this is the table, units of mangoes, TU and MU. So these are the values that we need to learn by heart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 18, 24, 28, 30, 30, 28. Okay. So mu, you get it by subtracting the TU values. So 28 minus 30 is minus 2, 30 minus 30 is 0, 30 minus 28 is 2. So that's how you get the mu values. You just know the TU values, it's fine. And then from the above table, you need to say that from the above table, it is clear that when consumer consumes the first mango, the TU and mu remains the same. TU goes on increasing and mu goes on decreasing. It remains the same till the fifth mango. By the sixth mango, TU is constant and mu has become 0. And by the seventh mango, TU started to decrease and mu has become negative. So that's how you tell that. So this is the diagram. You just represent the TU and the mu values 10, 18, 24, 28, 30, 30, 28 and 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 0, minus 2. Make sure that you name the x and the y axis. So from the above diagram, the TU is increasing at an increasing rate. It becomes constant at a point and then it falls. And mu is decreasing from the beginning. At a point it crosses the x-axis and becomes negative. So the limitations of this is that it's not applicable for money, for the consumption of liquor, old stamps, articles, and also for beauty and knowledge. So that is the DMU law. Next is the features of indifference curve. So indifference curve slopes downward from left to right, because as long as the consumer is on the same indifference curve, to consume more of one commodity, he has to sacrifice the other commodity. The next one is the higher indifference curve gives highest level of satisfaction. The consumer prefers the highest indifference curve to increase his level of satisfaction. So here I've just make a table like this. Apple and mangoes. Mangoes remain the same and apple changes. So here IC3 is preferred by the consumer because it has more number of apples than mangoes compared to IC1 and IC2. Okay, next is that the two indifference curve never intersect each other because it represents two different commodities showing two different level of satisfaction. In the diagram, they intersect at a point A, and A represents equal level of satisfaction, which is unrealistic. Okay, next is the optimal choice of the consumer. Explain the optimal choice. So consumer equilibrium refers to a situation in which consumer derives maximum equilibrium. Indifference curve explains choice and priority, and budget line shows the ability to pay. So to achieve consumer equilibrium, we need to combine the indifference curve with the budget line to determine the combination of goods which can be purchased. So assumptions: income of the consumer is given, consumer is rational, price of goods and services are constant, consumer is aware of the indifference map. And the condition of transitivity is satisfied. So according to this diagram, you need to actually say which point is optimal. There are four indifference curves, that is IC1, IC2, IC3 and IC4. The budget line is PQ, and you say from which point from A to E is optimal. So first of all, you draw four indifference curves, and on the second one you draw you draw a budget line that touches the second indifference curve, and then you name it. I've named it as PQ. And whichever point it intersects, you name it. Okay, you name letters such as A, B, C, D and E. So first you just tell if point C is optimal. No, because both B and C are on the same indifference curve. And is point D optimal? No, because it's on the higher indifference curve than any other combination. Point A is the only combination that gives the maximum utility. Here the indifference curve just touches the budget line and equilibrium is achieved at A. So the consumer is, we can say that the consumer is in equilibrium when the price line is just tangent to the indifference curve. So point A is the most optimal one to the consumer. Next, movement along the demand curve and shift in demand curve. Any change in price leads to the movement along the demand curve. You need to learn this diagram for movement. So from the above diagram, you see that when OP is the price, OQ is the demand. When price decreases from P to P1, demand increases from Q to Q1. And when price increases from P to P2, demand decreases from Q to Q2. So you just explain that, and that is movement along the demand curve. Next is the shift in the demand curve. Except price changes in any other factor leads to the shift in demand curve. For normal goods, it generally shifts towards the right, and for complementary goods, it generally shifts towards the left. So if I tell you an example, if price of coffee increases, the demand for tea increases, and the demand curve of tea shifts towards right and left side for coffee, and the demand curve for cool drinks in summer shifts towards the right, and during winter it shifts towards the left. So that's the shift in demand curve. Next is the market demand curve with the help of a diagram. So market demand refers to quantity of commodity purchased by all consumers together at different market prices. Here demand of consumers are taken together. This is the total of individual this is the total of individual demands. For example, let's just assume that there are two consumers and they are A and B. By adding up the demand of these two, we get the market demand schedule. Thus, the market demand for the good at each price can be derived by adding up the demands of two consumers at that price. So in this diagram, there's demand curve of consumer A, consumer B, and the market demand schedule. So when the price is P, it's Q1 for consumer A, for consumer B is Q2, and for the market demand schedule it's Q1 plus Q2. So that's how you write it down. Similarly, at price P1, the demand for consumer A is Q1 dash, demand for consumer B is Q2 dash, and the market demand schedule is Q1 dash plus Q2 dash. And this is the POQ in this chapter. How many bananas and mangoes? A consumer wants to consume 2 goods. The price of banana is ₹5 and mango is 10. How many bananas can she consume? She can consume 8 bananas, and mangoes it's 10. So how much is it? 40. So she can consume 4 mangoes. Slope of budget line downward, it is a downward sloping line. Are the bundles on budget line equal to consumers' income? Yes, it is equal. And if you want to have more banana, you will obviously have to consume more mangoes because it is one of the feature of indifference curve. We're done with the second chapter of economics. I hope this was helpful. If you have any doubts, please go down the comment box and write down your queries. And I hope that I will be able to clear them. Thank you.